if you open up Iran, or if you just give this much of a permission to do stuff in Iran, things can change very fast. That was the biggest thing that I learned. And it took like an ambulance, like I think 45 minutes to get to him. And then that's how it happened, from what I learned.
Wow.
Yeah. I think when my mom and my sister, they're watching my podcast, they're like this, oh my God. They wouldn't approve, but I think
I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure that's not true. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 351 of Roqe. I'm Jian. Imagine if Iran's tech trailblazers were allowed to soar. On today's episode, I'm joined in the studio by the Iranian-Canadian tech trailblazer, Soheil Alavi. He happens to be the creator and host of the very popular Persian podcast, Trailblazing, the 16th Floor. He's also a talented entrepreneur who created Rayhoon, the Iranian version of Uber Eats, before conditions in the Islamic Republic stifled his progress and he came back to Canada to thrive and survive. The thing is, his story is not unique. It's the tale of many young talents hungry for so much more. Imagine if Iran's tech trailblazers were allowed to soar. The amazing thing is that our country of ancestry may be a nation of poets, but it also continues to defy the odds as an unlikely hub of technological innovation. With biotech breakthroughs and advancements in artificial intelligence, Iranian minds are lighting up the global innovation index and driving the growth of over 8,000 knowledge-based companies. Yet while Iranian engineers and coders may burn brightly domestically, their dreams of global recognition are most often snuffed out. This isn't just a limitation, it's a lament. In a world where creativity could make them kings, they are left wrestling with the restrictions of a regime that fears the very progress its people strive to create. Imagine if Iran's tech trailblazers were allowed to soar. You see, this is what happens when vision collides with repression. The Islamic Republic's stranglehold is more than a bureaucratic inconvenience. It's a systemic choke point. Sanctions exacerbate the problem, yes, but internal policies rooted in control and censorship render the global tech race a non-starter for many. Imagine a young Iranian who could be the next Elon Musk. Imagine their ideas, a revolutionary app, a cutting-edge AI solution, sparking, flickering, and then fizzling out under the weight of a regime that fears freedom as much as it fears failure. This isn't just economics. This is a theft of potential, a robbery of ambition, a silencing of dreams. And what of jobs, those great gateways to opportunity? There's no Iranian NASA, no equivalent of a Google campus buzzing with ideas, no Tesla factories shaping the future. Even the most brilliant minds are left with limited prospects within Iran. Young visionaries with the capacity to build rockets or reimagine artificial intelligence find themselves with no platform to match their potential. The Islamic Republic touts its technological initiatives, but the reality is a workforce stifled by the absence of world-class organizations and meaningful investment in cutting-edge research. What does ambition do in a country where the infrastructure for innovation is more fantasy than reality? Imagine if Iran's tech trailblazers were allowed to soar. And here's perhaps the great tragedy. The Iranian diaspora is vast, it's talented, and in many cases aching to return home. Give them the space, the freedom, and opportunity, and many would go back. Picture the exiled entrepreneur who dreams of building the next great tech empire in the very country that gave them their roots. Imagine the scientist or engineer yearning to teach and create in the land of their ancestors. Instead, the current regime builds walls where there should be bridges, shutting out not just the world, but its own brightest stars. It isn't just a question of sanctions or censorship. It's a systemic failure to understand that freedom isn't a threat. It's the foundation of greatness. If Iran were unshackled, how many trailblazers would return to reimagine their homeland? How many innovators could flourish in a land that's theirs? Certainly, it is far beyond time to demand change and more. How long will circumstances be allowed to clip the wings of a nation ready to soar? All right, on this episode, Soheil Alavi joins me on technology, immigration, podcasting, and integration, a feature conversation with the founder of the 16th Floor. Pegah is here with her thoughts and more. Sit back and try to have fun. This is Roqe, episode 351. It's December 19th, 2024. This is Roqe. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 351 of Roqe. I'm Jian Hello from Toronto. Salam Dustan Aziz, Durud ba Shoma. Hope you're doing well wherever you are tuning in from around the world. Hello, smart Pegah.
Hello.
Nice to have you here.
So nice to be back in this chair. Love it.
And a chair that will be occupied shortly by Soheil Alavi.
Yes.
I am very grateful to him for making the time to come in here. I've been looking forward to having a conversation with him. I am impressed by his by how well his podcast is done, and it's so watchable. It's so interesting. It's so it's like you're watching tech insider talk that you're not supposed to be allowed to hear or something. You know of this. You know Trailblazers that.
Yeah, I've listened to quite a few of the episodes, I guess. And I'm not a tech person by any means. I wouldn't say that I'm part of the tech community.
You're not a tech trailblazer?
No, definitely not.
Who should be soaring in Iran?
No, I'm not. Although I appreciate all of those individuals in the community and all of that. But that's what I was going to say. It's so listenable, even for someone like me. And one of the things that I noticed is,
his podcast.
His podcast, yeah. And it's like a conversation, and it's fun, and it's funny, and I apologize to all the tech community out there, but that's not the first thing I think of when I think of a tech podcast. It's not. I wouldn't think it would be funny and easy to listen to.
What would you think it would be?
I don't know, a little bit more nerdy and things like that. And I'm stereotyping here, but really that's,
No, I think they should wear the nerdism with as a badge of pride. An honor.
Exactly.
And I was trying to get at what I was trying to get at with the essay there is it's a very important resource, young Iranian minds.
Yes.
And around innovation, technology, and people like Soheil, who you sort of go, wow, it's great to have him here in Toronto, but this guy would be, leading the world in a lot of ways were he to have been able to pursue what he was doing in Iran.
Absolutely.
Not that there aren't people who have stayed in Iran who do great work and who defiantly want to stay there, etc. But for all the reasons we know, and so it's a great window to his podcast, and I'm curious about where the idea came from. I mean, I'm going to say this to him, but I asked around a little bit about why you think Trailblazers, that the 16th floor is such a popular podcast, and a lot of people that I asked, I mean, unscientific survey, said there's nothing else like it. Like it is the place. It's the platform for tech talk in Persian.
Yeah.
And so that's a great resource for us. I want to hear why he started it. I want to hear more about him. I know a little bit about his journey and the things he's done, but looking forward to having him here.
I have to say, I am excited that he's doing this in English on a program like this, because Trailblazers is all in Farsi. And, when I listen to it, I appreciate it, I enjoy it, but it's one of those things, like so many other things within the community, that I find are isolated to that Farsi speaking community. So it's wonderful that, I think other people will now be exposed to it. Some people who maybe don't listen to Farsi podcasts or don't feel as comfortable understanding the language, things like that. And selfishly, I want to know more about Trailblazers in English, where I'm more comfortable.
All right.
So
I'm
excited for that.
Well, we're going to bring Soheil in just a second here. Before we do that, you haven't been here for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
A bunch of fucking, I'm in a different city. I'm in the hospital. I don't know. I mean, things that I have no sympathy for.
Yes, of course.
I want you to be here. But in your absence, and it really was in your absence, I wish you had been here. You were conspicuous in your absence. I did the announcement for Roqe Live 4,
yes,
which of course you'll be on stage for as
Absolutely.
well. Roqe Live 4, February 6, 2025.
Yep.
Tickets are now on sale.
Yes, and I see going quickly. I noticed that I went to go look, and VIP seats are sparse. Like,
the VIP seats are almost sold out.
Yeah,
it's like it's such an interesting. I don't know if that's a window into our audience or Iranians, I don't know, but I want
VIPs,
VIP.
yeah.
Those are the tickets that go first.
Yep.
And we actually expanded our VIP section
Exactly.
of the theater, but those are almost gone now. Yeah.
Yep.
But if you don't have your tickets yet, and if you're going to be anywhere near Toronto, Thursday, February 6th, it's at a place called City Playhouse Theater. It's a Thursday night, February 6th. So City Playhouse Theater is where we did Roqe Live 3.
That's
We're
right.
expanding it a little for Roqe Live 4. And it's just north of Toronto. So people who are in Canada or in the Greater Toronto area know where Thornhill is.
That's right.
Thornhill and or Vaughan.
I was going to say.
We can't decide where it's located.
Depends on which one you want to go
Depends
by.
on where your pride is.
Yeah.
I mean, as a Thornhill kid, I like to say Thornhill, but I also don't think it's actually in Thornhill. Like Thornhill was never Bathurst Street.
I thought we figured it was like on the cusp, and that's why
I
there's
don't
all
know.
this.
Doesn't matter.
anyway.
Too inside baseball for anybody who doesn't care about this stuff and is listening to us in Australia. But it's in the Greater Toronto area, Thursday, February 6th. And what a lineup.
Yes.
Who are you most excited about?
Oh, that's a tough question. But I'm going to give you an answer. I have to say Soheil Alavi.
That's the easy answer. That's the layup.
I know.
I was
but
like, yeah. I
that's
thought you
what
might
I'm-
go
that's what I'm
deeper
most
into
excited
that.
about.
I thought you went deeper.
Actually, I'm
deeper into the program.
I'm
yeah.
most excited for Soheil, and I'm also excited for Dang Show, our own Shia.
Yes,
I haven't seen
our
him
friends.
in long time. So
Dang
I'm
Show
excited.
releasing a new album
Yeah.
on that day and celebrating it at
At Roqe Live.
Roqe Live, and they're going to be performing, so you want to see that. Yes, Soheil Alavi, who will be the recipient of this Roqe Media Icon Award for this live episode, and I couldn't be more thrilled that she's coming in. Farhad, who I've said on the previous shows, he doesn't really go any. I don't see him popping up in places other than Iran International.
Yeah.
I mean, we know him behind the anchor desk, but so it's nice to have him in a different environment where
That's right.
we'll find out, how funny he is in front of an audience or
Find
something.
out what he's like from behind, not behind the anchor desk. That's what I meant.
You want to see you want to find out what he's like from behind.
No, I said not
See
behind the anchor
Mer.
desk. Yes.
Yeah,
course.
our friend, the singer-songwriter, the guitarist, Ghazal piano, Ghazal Akhundzadeh, who performing an original piece on piano. There's a grand piano in the theater, and Anahita Nayabi, our own Anahita, talented Anahita,
Exactly.
will be performing. She's of course a celebrated dancer.
That's right.
And so we have her, and then you. On the roundup, we'll have you with the journalist Masso Mortazavi, and then a DJ throughout the night, Blanche Echo, who she's awesome, and I'm thrilled to have her. So it's quite a lineup. Tickets are on sale now. Where can they get them, Pegah?
They can get them from the City Playhouse Theater website.
That's too difficult. Too hard.
City Playhouse Theater
Well, they
website.
can.
Of course they can.
They can, but then you have to go find the website. There's easier places.
Well, they can go to Roqe, our website. They
Yes.
can go to Roqe's website.
Roqemedia.com.
Roqemedia.com
Yeah.
and get them right
Even
there.
easier
Even
if you're
easier.
anywhere near Instagram.
Yes, of course.
If you have any access to Instagram.
Link in bio.
Go to our Roqe Media page,
Yeah.
and in the bio, right there is the link. You press
That's
that. It's your gateway to tickets.
Come on, online ticketing is so easy. All of these methods are literally a click away. So any of them.
Still problematic for some of our audience who email us and
Give me a message. I will direct you happily.
Roqe Live 4 tickets available now, Thursday, February 6th. You do want to get them as soon as possible because they're being snapped up. All right, we're going to talk on the other side of this interview. Looking forward to bringing him in here. Let's get to our feature interview. All right, my featured guest today is a popular podcaster and tech entrepreneur with a passion for innovation and storytelling. Soheil Alavi is perhaps best known as the founder and host of the popular Persian language podcast and YouTube show Tabaqe Shunzda, the 16th Floor, where he brings successful people in tech together in his 16th floor Toronto residence to discuss startups, technology, life. The podcast has gained a dedicated following in the hundreds of thousands around the world. In addition to his podcasting success, Soheil is the CPO and co-founder of Better Mode, a cutting-edge community platform he helped establish in 2018. Better Mode is a cloud-based platform designed with a deep understanding of modern user behavior with powerful integrations. What the frig that means, you will explain to me. That's straight out of your propaganda. He's also the guy who founded Rayhoon in Iran in 2014, which was a very successful online food ordering services, basically the Persian Uber Eats. Right now, Soheil Alavi joins me in the Roqe studio. Hello, sir.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
What a pleasure it is to have you here.
Likewise. It's honestly, it's very surreal for me. I always admired your work back in 2008. When I first initially got into Canada, and maybe like after I moved to Toronto, those early days, for the very first time that I started listening something audio only, I remember it was you at a time. And now being your guest is a bit weird for me.
It's my honor because I really appreciate what you do. I mean, you've got a massively successful podcast. Does that surprise you?
Well, I don't really take it on my own. I give the credit to the guests and an already established tech community. Honestly, again, I think mostly there are way more people more knowledgeable than me, more charismatic than me that would be able to done this. They just chose not to do it. Or because they're busy doing something else, or still...
You're really outdoing yourself on the Persian modesty, the fake modesty.
No, I'm not really, because I do really believe in that. I think I don't consider myself as a podcaster or anything like that.
Well, that's part of the reason I asked, because you've said that this doesn't actually come naturally to you, and yet watching you and listening to you as I've done, you're great. I mean, you're natural. You're a performer. You're a broadcaster. So it's interesting to me that this wasn't something that you thought you would necessarily be great at.
I'm flattered. Well, I think it goes back to your childhood. Like I was like I have so many friends. I'm a social person. The reason that I'm actually doing the startups and entrepreneurship makes me to connect with a lot of people, interviewing a lot of people work-wise. I had to pitch to investors. So I was not always like this. I had tapesh qalb a lot of times when I was actually getting in front of a crowd back in time. But I think just keep doing it. It makes you sort of feel that it's natural. And these are all the stuff that I learned that I just really excited to talk about. So the whole idea of the podcast was that all of these small experiences and all of my own way of how can I articulate this learning that I had, and can I somehow put it into words so it's going to make sense for a lot of other people. So this idea of why am I doing a podcast, then I think there are a lot more qualified people than me that they would be able to do it.
What is qualified, though? It's an alchemy. I mean, you're bringing your tajrobeh, right? You're bringing your experience to the table. And I have to say, when I call you out on being modest, you are, I'm sure, being honest and humble. But it isn't just about the guests, in the sense that, as you know, I think at this point, a podcast like 16th Floor has enough gravitas, it has enough of a trust factor with the audience that you probably sometimes bring guests that the audience doesn't know, but they trust you enough to want to stay with the show, correct?
Yeah, it is true. There is a saying that some of the people said that Soheil is some sort of I don't want to use the word in your podcast, but it's sort of translated into being fun but also legit, meaning that...
What's the word?
Soheil khoskhole but legit. So,
legit khoskhole.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
The idea is that because maybe it is the medium that I also... So I was really bad at school.
Really?
Yeah, but in a sense that because the medium of the education, in a sense that there would be one teacher and like there would be like one-way interaction, that didn't sort of connected with me like very, very early on. So even when I was in like elementary school, I was like, this is not for me. And when I talked to some of my friends that they chose to go and do concours and all this stuff, and I was like, why did you guys do that? And they were like, at a time I didn't know that there would be other path that I can choose this way or that way or that way.
But is that to say, sorry to cut you off, is that to say that the people around you would have underestimated or not known how successful you can be in life, or that you were just a genius oddball, is somebody who clearly showed that he has the intellectual chops, for example, that would make you such an entrepreneur, etc., but just didn't fit in with the approach, the teaching approach, or the model of education?
So first of all, I'm really flattered when you're talking about like being successful and all this stuff. To me, it's just a beginning. I have not in my portfolio done anything that considered by the global standards successful. I do not have an Uber. I do not have an Airbnb or being like that. But I've been trying. So I give that to myself.
How old are you? If
right
you don't
now,
mind asking.
36.
Right now?
Yeah. In 2 months, I'm going to be 37.
Oh, I see. Okay, you're right. There's a imminent birthday. Okay. So you're in your mid to late 30s. You've started a number of different businesses, it seems. A few of them, I mean, the ones I know about, achieved enough success that you had over 100 employees. I mean, that surely puts you in the top, I don't know, point something percent globally of people who start businesses, doesn't it?
Depends.
I mean, if you're only comparing yourself to Dara Khosrowshahi, then maybe you haven't had that.
Well, we do, yeah. Not to Dara, but the standard Silicon Valley startup scene, yes. And it also depends how you would define success. Because at some point in time, you might argue that, for example, employing hundreds of people would consider as a success. In another word, in a startup school, when you're hiring people, it means that you are not able to answer the demand. That could also consider as being success, but it's also a cry for help, that I need more people, I need more money in order to be able to achieve something that should have been done by only few people. So in one way or another, something that might be considered success, in some other way it might be considered failure. So it depends really on that. But sure, I'm not trying to be like humble or something like that. But what I'm trying to say is that it's really, really just a beginning. I'm just like start to really make sense of the word.
Okay, but when you say you weren't great at school, and if you're willing to accept that you've had some level of success, right? I mean, even just with your podcast, you know, if Roqe is in the 0.1% of podcasts around the world, surely Pegah is as well. Do you, when I say, would people have seen this in you when you were a kid, saying you didn't do well in school? Would they have?
Well, everything that I've done till to this now, it was more of me looking at myself, trying to understand myself. And I look at myself as a project mostly. Like, I do not see it as a Soheil. Like, when people are talking about this person, Pegah Soheil, I'm not really taking it on my own. I look at it as a third person. Okay, this is this guy. What I'm, to be honest, I am the biggest critic of myself.
Sure.
So maybe that is the reason that I'm not
love
really
that.
So proud
but
of
you
myself.
are, but it is authentically you on the show, isn't it?
It is. But it's
not a character.
It's not a character, but I would be able to separate myself from that character, looking at it with no judgment, and just, for example, like looking at him and say like, okay, this person, he needs to increase a sense of humor. Maybe he has to do this, he has to do that. Just because there is a catch though. Like when you are truly yourself, but then the data starts coming in, you know, then you also want it to some sort of alignment with what the audience wants, what the audience thinks, to the point that you're not going to change yourself, you know, but you still need to adopt yourself a bit. And these are the small bits.
Is that what the data showed, that you have to be more funnier?
Not necessarily, but what I'm trying to understand is that, for example, like the fact that we Iranians here, when we are talking Qati Farsi English, is not such a big deal. Like we don't even notice it.
Yes.
I very soon started to notice that people are just damn like getting mad about this idea of why these guys are talking like this, like either talking Farsi or either talking English. What is this mixed language?
On a Persian podcast.
Which to us it was not even a
People don't mind on an English show like ours if we throw in Persian words.
Yeah, exactly.
But on a Persian, as soon as I start only talking Persian, if we throw in English words, it's I see what
and
you're
I can
saying.
understand that. Like, to be honest, like I go back in Iran, even if there is a friend of mine that they're coming back from somewhere else outside Iran, and at lunch they're saying, سوسو پس کن به من. Like I'm like سوسو پس کن به من. What is like 2 روز رفتی خارج چی فکر کردی با خودت. So I can see that. And because I am also connected.
I literally talk that way because it's the only way I can. But yes, I'm glad you think
now
it's funny.
Imagine you go to Iran. You're not going to survive.
I'll just be Khareji. I'll be like, who got the brother, the Canadian guy.
Yeah. So these are the small bits that I learned. You know, like, okay, so try. And it's hard for us. Like,
but you do, I mean, do you really look at it that way in terms of data? And because forgive me, but it's a very Iranian engineer kind of way of, it reminds me of all my brilliant cousins who are all mostly engineers, who will be like, let's look at the data and then we become better hosts, you know? And it's like, well, actually, performance and doing something like an interview is not, it can't be boiled down to a math equation. You know, there's a lot going in there. There are the ingredients that you simply can't answer only scientifically.
I totally understand you, and I think it's more coming from me being in the tech world rather than being Iranian, because tech is all about data, like how users are behaving, what they're doing. We have this famous saying that don't ask questions from users, like what you like, just observe, because people are actually going to be different and saying different things. There is this famous saying that if you ask for like what people want, they would say like faster horses. They wouldn't say that they want a car. So in that sense, I think that background is coming from that perspective. But honestly, I am actually the only one who at my company, when designers and engineers are coming and saying that let's do A/B testing, meaning that let's just do this for half of the users and for the other half of users and see how they're reacting. I am more of leaning toward the way that Apple and Steve Jobs do stuff, which is coming from taste, you know. Whereas like there are two sort of cults in building and doing stuff. Like if I just want to give an example, like just put one as an Apple and the other, like Apple as a company, and the other one Google is like more of everything is opened, Android, you can tweak stuff, you can change the stuff, you can customize the stuff. Apple in a nutshell is more of closed, I don't want any other opinions, you are not able to open it up, you are not able to change
Apple?
it. I am more of that, meaning that when we are talking about this data thing, I hear them, the data, but I'm not necessarily applying them, and I'm not trying to be the person. I just want it to be me. To be honest, it's actually harder for me to change rather than... Because
you may lose yourself if you just you crowdsource everything that you're supposed to be doing, and clearly it's
being
working.
Authentic, honestly, آنچه از دل بیاید بر دل نشیند, I think there's...
How dare you use Persian in an English podcast?
So I think that's just another confirmation that being yourself does work.
When I've asked people, I mean, why Tabaqeh 16, why the 16th floor is so popular? I mean, I just did a little unscientific survey of people. Some of the feedback I've gotten is that there just isn't anything else. This became the forerunner of qualified tech talk in the Persian space. Is that the reality?
That is true. So there are few things about the reason on why I started a podcast and how I see why it's growing. So number one was that, first of all, in that space, I was really lonely. You know, like I wanted to listen to podcasts. I listened to a lot of podcasts, English ones, and there were not quite something like the Farsi one that I would love to hear. And the reason is that I think you also as a Iranian would notice this, that us Iranians, when we are on the record, we somehow change. Like even in Iran, So even in Iran, our parties, like our family parties are different. Like when we are saying hello, like گوشیو بگیر به خاله سلام بکن. Like everything is some sort of feels fake, you know.
Yes,
Like
yeah.
حتما زنگ بزن.
Doesn't just feel fake.
Yeah,
It's
حتما زنگ بزن تبریک بگو. بابا نمیخوام تبریک بگم.
Exactly, yeah.
So all of these small bits of, and this is a cultural thing. Like it is our culture to show off differently.
Yeah.
Like both people behind like
some of it well-intentioned, some of it not. Definitely the family stuff, you know, get on the phone and talk to your aunt, you know, and you, it's almost like a script.
Yeah.
It's like when the president speaks to a prime minister of another country, you go through a certain protocol. It's the same thing, and it really is fake most of the time.
It is fake, and I think these are all the trust issues that now Iranians we have towards each other, because we are not sure how authentic they are, or if they really mean what they are asking. Like if you thought of me like chai mikhai, to be honest, I'm not sure if I can say exactly what I want, you know. Like I'm not sure, you know. Like and I think that is the challenge that we have.
So you see that as well in the tech space, or how does that? What does that have to do with starting the podcast?
So what I noticed was that so during COVID, when it happened, like we were all locked in, and then we tend to talk to a lot of people, and like some of my friends in tech, we started like talking when we are at home. No one was watching it, and no one was listening to us. Those 2 or 3 or small groups of conversation, when we were talking about like how your company is doing, how your company is like is performing right now, and everyone was like, they were like real. I don't know, man. Like everything is going to shit right now. I don't know what's gonna happen. I think we have to fire that guy. We have to do this. We have to do that. And then you go on the record. How's your company doing? It's doing amazing. Thanks God. Like we are performing well this year. We have an amazing team. And I was like, I know your team is not amazing. Love this and that and that. You know. So I was like, but then I noticed that those conversations that we really having it for real are really, really authentic. And those are the ones that we can take action on it. Those are the real one. So the feedback that you have that, for example, like, should I hire that people, you know, because you already work with that person, and you say, no, don't work with that because we already had that experience. But now you're on the record, like you say something else. Well, maybe just talking about people is not going to be the best thing, because you are not going to ruin these people's life over an online thing. But overall, like, or don't use that tool, or we did this and that didn't work, or we launched that campaign that didn't work. But these sort of very real practical feedback, I would say, was not coming when you were going on the record. And when I had all of these discussions with investors, with tech people and all this stuff, I just wanted to see if I would be able to pull those information off people. So I try to make them comfortable. I don't try to do anything. I think the reason that the podcast got a bit of attraction was that because they just feel a little bit at ease.
Yes, that's part of the trick.
At ease to talk about some of the stuff that they would normally not talk in other channels.
But what do you have certain devices you use to make sure that you're not getting the fake or tarofi kind of response, or do you call people out? Do you go, excuse me, you're bullshitting? Like, I mean, what do you do to try and produce that authenticity that you're looking for, that does not come naturally to us culturally?
Based on the feedback that I heard, is that one of the reason is that because, and that's the reason that I'm saying that I'm not considered myself a podcaster, because usually it tends to be that there would be a person from another, like they are a journalist or something, that they tend to interview people. But now with this new media and with this new tools, I am the same material, like, as they are. Like, they are tech people, I am a tech person. So it's not a interview. Like, it's more of two people in the same industry talking. Like, imagine Ali Dai interviews like another,
which they do. You famous football players are usually broadcasters for football for a reason. That makes sense to me. If you were, I mean, I tend to think there's a mistake that is being made. Maybe I'm just old school as a media person because I've been doing it for a long time, but I do think in the new podcast space in the last few years, there's a mistake, which is that oh, how did you get, like, well, they don't not say Persians, everybody has, it generalizes that if we just turn on the microphones and talk, it'll be interesting. That's not true. That's almost never true, actually. Just two people talking isn't interesting to other people, and there has to be a conversation that is bringing some content that either feels relevant or feels entertaining or feels provocative or feels, that either comes from, I like to believe, an interview that has an arc, that has preparation, that has information, that has research, or that comes from an insider kind of place. Exactly. Where you're listening to two people talk about something that they know about and you're really eager to hear about. And that's why I like watching Gary Neville. I don't know if you're a fan of English football, but soccer, but why I like watching Gary Neville and Ian Wright speak, because here's a couple of guys who are basically talking about insider stuff about the Premier League that is just not going to be the same as you and I talking about it, no matter how good we are as interviewers or whatever. So that's what you're doing in this space, right? You're doing something that others, also given who you bring on the program, are interested to hear about, because you're bringing people at a certain level whose experience is relevant to an audience. Yes,
exactly. So tech conversations are, I think, they are interesting to some extent, because we are talking about like very like something that is happening nowadays in technology, like, and how the world is like going right now. To me, like, this whole idea of startups and just subscribing to this cult, I would say, also taught me a lot of stuff about life, like how to talk to people, how to interview people, how to live my life, how to choose my clothes, what to eat. Like, they are all from these knowledge of how to run a startup, but it also branched to other parts of my life.
What did you learn about what to eat from startups?
Well, I get into it.
Okay.
I'll get into it. Because, to put it in a nutshell, like, you first learn how to study things. So that's a very basic, right. Like, we haven't been taught like how to love, how to learn, how to do things, like how to do life. Like, we haven't really learned those type of stuff. And I think
anyone or Iranians inside Iran? Who are you talking about?
Pretty much everyone. Like, pretty much everyone. Like,
you don't think people are taught how to do life, and they learn it from tech startups?
No, but I don't. Yeah. I don't necessarily tech startups. I see myself as a project, and then I can consider myself a startup as well. So in that sense, and I'm symbolizing a lot of stuff in my mind. So that's what I do usually. But overall, in a sense of the podcast, I think you are trying to talk something that, because when things are going to be only about tech or about a specific topic, it's usually getting boring. So if you would be able to just have interesting topic, it's entertainment and education. And I see a lot of other channels are also following that. So
do you get anybody that you want to get in terms of in that tech sector? Do you have people who say no, or do you pretty much have the trust of these famous CEOs and tech startup guys and everything who want to come on your show?
I would say at this stage, yes. The podcast, like the early episodes, like I would say till like the 100th episodes, it's all started with friends.
Yes.
The people that I directly know, and till to this day. And actually, to be honest, that's one of the reasons that actually took off, because the conversations were just friends are talking.
Yes, yes.
So that's
the barriers are not there. The mistrust or whatever. Yeah.
But now, as I have much more high-profile people on the podcast, and the way that, because some of the people, it used to be like saying that I already talk at this podcast or at this TV station at that, but they noticed that the type of conversation and topic that are shaping is different, completely different. And I can actually, someone said it in the comments really well. I'm not sure how I would be able to say it in English, but they said خلوتگاه یک entrepreneur یا یک کارآفرین, like the type of topics that you would not normally talk about, all of those traumas, all of the fears that you have as an entrepreneur, so it's coming off. And because we feel each other, like we want it to be sort of I think people relate, if I want to use the word. Like other people that they are working on their own endeavors, they are basically trying to have someone feeling that, because most of the comments are like, I felt so lonely, and now I feel I'm not alone again.
These are questions I wanted to get to later, but while we're at it, I mean, where is the audience? Is the audience in Iran, or is the audience
60% are in Iran?
60%.
Yeah.
So does that govern some of your content? Some of the things that you have to constantly be aware of, that you can't just sound like a guy in Southern California, that you have to be aware of what the reality of life is in Iran?
No, not necessarily. So again, the podcast, the idea of the podcast is that, so let me put it this way. So I was in Iran. I had this startup in Iran, and one of the things that happened in Iran right now is that the connection with the outside world is some sort of very, very limited. So the idea of the podcast was that I really personally wanted to talk to some people that they're working at this big tech companies like Facebook, Google, and all this stuff, because like these are the best people to learn how the company is running, how do you do your daily stand-ups, how do you do your meetings, how do you run your projects. So I really wanted to actually talk to the Iranians that they are working at these sort of companies for the people in Iran, because back in 2014, when I got back to Iran, which from 2014 to 2018, because of the JCPOA, Iran, it was a golden era of Iran's startup flourishing. Like I remember back at a time, in 2013, before I moved back to Iran, it all started with Economist. The Economist magazine stated that DG Kala, the equivalent of Amazon, is now worth $150 million in Iran. And that was the start of, okay, so Iran has the potential and all this stuff. And then I started reading on non-Iranian magazines that investors are also saying that Iran is the last place on earth that is intact, and no investment and no startup has done yet, and it has the biggest potential, because almost more than 60% of the population are below 35 years old. The internet penetration is really high, and the country is really moving forward. Everyone was really techy, so
educated,
eager,
into tech. Tech is a lifeline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it all started like that, and suddenly it got closed back after. Like that's what happened to my own startup too. You know, we had Uber Eats of Iran. We raised about $1 million back in Iran from both investors inside Iran and outside Iran. And quickly, it was a very, very dynamic time. A lot of people chose to get back. Most of the people that I had my podcast, they were among those that they were outside Iran. After the JCPOA, they got back to Iran, and now they're out in Iran again.
Like you. Let me just come back to that. First of all, stop hitting the table. I don't know what you do over there at Tanada 16, but stop hitting the table.
The trick is that we don't connect it to the
table. Well, you guys are fancy. We have a table and we have microphones on it. I wanted to, first of all, we didn't get to the answer to the question of who, I guess why I'm sort of getting at who you feel most responsible to. Maybe this is an unfair question, but it sounds like you're part of your personal mission with this is the kid or the person in Iran more so than the person in Sacramento. Would that be true?
True. I think number one is that I got like this tech thing. I see a lot of my friends and a lot of other people, like they are still a little bit lost in life, what I want to do with my life, what to do. And don't get me wrong, I'm also too. But at least this tech, when I'm talking about tech, I'm not necessarily talking about technology, but this community, you know, the flow of free information on the internet that you wouldn't be able to become a doctor and just by Googling and all this stuff, but you would have been able to do it in tech. So it felt like there is a huge community, everything that you search, like how to do this, how to do that, like you would be able to find it. gamers.
I was going to say, are gamers tech?
Yeah,
They are, right? Yeah.
So
Would all nerds be tech, or just some nerds, and then non-nerds are also tech?
honestly, at this stage, we are in an era that I don't consider anyone techie. Like everyone should be techie. Like look at our watch, look at the microphone, look at the laptop in front of you. Everything is a technology nowadays. Not so. This
Everyone
is future.
has to be in tech some way or another.
So I feel like I got lucky to some extent. Like early in my life, not early even, to be honest. Like I was at a time I was like 15, 16 years old. Like we had a computer at the house, but not the computer itself, but the interaction. The whole thing was really interesting. Like when I told you that I was not good at school because I didn't like this medium of one person.
The pedagogical approach.
Yeah. Like this interaction thing. You do something, you see that interaction happening at the same time, and then you would be able to tweak something and see another result. Like all of these stuff helped me. So to answer your question, if I feel responsible, I feel I got lucky and I got benefited from getting to know the tech scene. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was free information, free flowing information that probably is not that common in a bunch of other practices. And I just feel that I gotta pay back. And to be honest, it's not just me. Like looking at Elon Musk and Bill Gates and everyone else, they accumulated so much wealth that at some point in time they feel that they have to pay back. Yeah. And not that I am trying to pay back because I feel so, but because I think that's the way the world works.
Let me just move away from the podcast for a moment, from Trailblazers and ask about you, and go backwards a little bit. You've talked a little bit about your upbringing and your being a kid. I mean, if we think of you as an entrepreneur, which I think is an apt description, even in starting the 16th floor, but certainly in different companies you've started, were you always an entrepreneur? Were you the 6-year-old kid with the lemonade stand or the equivalent of it in Iran?
Yes.
You know, I've got a new kind of lemonade, 10 cents each, 10 rial each, whatever. Were you that kid?
Yes, in that, not in a sense of trying to make money, but the very first thing that I did was like I created the website for our school at a time. And quite frankly, if I'm not exaggerating, we built the very initial Facebook. We built the initial Spotify.
Wow. What?
Honestly, like...
you made Spotify before Spotify made Spotify?
Well, very, very early on. Like even the internet was still dial-up. But for example, the concept of Facebook, which started from college and university at Harvard.
This really helps, by the way, with the Iranians invented everything category. I know the guy who actually did Spotify. It was an Iranian guy. Soheil, come on.
No, what I'm trying to say is that the idea of it, the cloud-based, everything lives on a cloud, and you would be able to have a music player interface on the web. In that sense, what I'm trying to say, like not the idea of a Spotify, because that's a lot of investment, a lot of dealing with record labels. But what I'm trying to say is that very initially, even at a time, the interface was
after
not popular.
Napster?
Almost the same time.
Okay.
Almost the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
And you were part of that.
Well, I had 021 selfmusic.com. So the whole Persian underground music started when Surush and I, we actually started that website, which at a time internet was not so much popular yet in Iran. Because I am talking about Google. Google started in 1998. So I'm talking about 99.
Wow, yeah, that was definitely right on the precipice of Napster and all that. Same time.
Exactly. So it was BBS. Like we had this internal networks in Iran. Like we used to connect with hyperterminal, very command-based. It was sort of a baby internet.
So you were in Tehran, right?
Yeah. So it all started with that. And it was a music player. So it was not a website that you could download, But it was very ahead of its time, like buffering times, streaming times, that you should wait 10 minutes for it to just play 10 seconds of the sound. So when I'm saying that, is that if we had the opportunity, because what happened, like Facebook had the idea, they connected college education, like college students together, and they got funded, you know. We didn't have that opportunity because we also created our website for the school, fajrdanish.com, at a time. And it was exactly like a social network. So if I just give you an example how it was
A way
working,
to meet girls?
Exactly, and that's how it got popular. So,
Right.
so I don't know if you remember the era of Yahoo Messenger.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
there was a way, if you were online on Yahoo Messenger, you would be able to have the face getting on that you're online. And there was a way that you can use a piece of code to show that on the web too, that if this person is online on Yahoo Messenger. And we had all of the people from our school was signing up to our website, but it was a directory showing all the people, but we were also showing if their Yahoo Messenger is online without having them on your friends list. And then the girls was coming to the website, and it was started to having initially like having digital photos online. You know, for the very first time, photos was like digital, and we were just among the first. Like one of the people that we had, like he happened to have a digital camera, and we were uploading the images online. So it actually started to become like sort of a social network. People could follow each other at a time. So some sort of like 021. And then fajrdanish.com. So all of these stuff.
So the answer is you really were this guy from the get-go. You're a little inventor. You're an entrepreneur. You like ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do you, if you're that guy and you're achieving some success, there's no other way to put it, traction inside Iran. And it's a moment where Khatami, if I'm thinking about the era, it becomes president, and there's some notion of openness and all of that. Why do you, at that point, move to Canada in 2006?
I wanted to study animation at the time, and I think one thing that happened to us, maybe because of internet, I had more of an idea of what is happening in the world. You know, like watching movies, listening to music, you know, like this is something that I learned later on in life when I actually got back to Iran. That, for example, I was living in Iran. I was at Sharak Gharb, and then most of my friends were looking like me. You know, they were not that much of a different. We all listened to rock. You know, like we all born with like, I don't know, like Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit, Korn, all of these bands, you know, listening to Pink Floyd, listening to all of this. And I thought the whole country is like that, you know. And I was like we had VHS at a time. I was like watching Ninja Turtles, like all of this stuff was normal to us, you know. So at a time I was really fascinated by animation, and we necessarily didn't have much of a industry there. So I actually wanted to come over to study animation, which I learned that is not as glorified as I thought to begin with, because you're just looking at the end result. Then you have to go and like build all of the pixels.
Too tedious? Too time consuming?
I noticed that I like to do multiple things rather than just one thing. So the reason that I love startups is that I get to do pretty much everything. I get to do building a product with designers and do a bit of a marketing and work with a sound designer to create a sound for an ad, work with actors to create an ad, work with artists, work with product designers, work with salespeople. So I tend to do a startup because it's not a definite thing. There is no defined, like, this is your skill set.
Right.
So that
you also, I mean, in terms of any lack of enthusiasm, you moved to New Brunswick.
Yeah.
Which is not exactly like moving to Toronto or Vancouver or New York or something. I mean, there was probably some culture shock involved in that, right?
True.
Not to take anything away from the good people of New Brunswick, of course.
No, of course. So first of all, at a time, and that was back in 2006, talking to lawyers, that was the only place that was, you had the most likelihood of getting accepted. And at a time when I came to, like, I just watched your last podcast about how in the last few years, all Iranians poured in.
Yeah.
And at a time, it was really, really hard. Like, you had to do IELTS.
There was one guy on the radio.
Exactly. So at a time, it was really hard. And that was the most feasible place, the most practical place that you would be able to apply and get accepted.
I mean, you eventually come to Toronto, and you're finding your footing. Can I ask you about your dad? Is that okay?
Sure.
Because you when you go back to Iran in 2014, from what I understand, part of the precipitant of that is that your dad is not doing well, and your dad and my dad died pretty much at the same time in 2014. Obviously, it had a profound effect on me. How did that event and going back to Iran at that time change your perspective?
Actually, everything started from that time. The podcast, getting into startups in a much more serious way. So my dad actually passed away. They didn't tell me that. They just asked me, come to Iran, like your dad is not feeling well.
Oh, you didn't know?
Yeah. And I heard the news in a very bad way, to be honest. I was at I had a flight to Frankfurt and then to Tehran. And at Frankfurt, my phone called. And someone called me and said Tasliyat migam, which I didn't know that at the time. So that's how I learned about my dad passing away. But long story
the plan was just to tell you he's sick and for you to get back there and for the family to tell you once you're
and then when I got there, I learned that my dad
that flight from Frankfurt to Tehran must have been a nightmare for you after you get that message.
Yes, I have some thoughts on it, but just continue this conversation. So I went back to Iran in 2014, September 2014. And because I just wanted to take my mind off of these thoughts and thinking about, like, I had to make myself busy with something. So I learned that there is this place called Avatech in Iran at Danishgah Tehran, that people are doing startups and all this stuff. And I was like, I just wanted to be busy with something. Let's just go and check it out. And that was the time that I got that it was a start of all of the podcast and all of these startup entrepreneurship for me in a much more serious note. So what happened was that I went there and I saw this, and I was in Canada, I was in Toronto. Like, I thought I already moved to a much more better place than Iran. The startup ecosystem here was also trying to actually flourish.
Sorry, if the thing hadn't happened with your dad, you would have stayed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had no reason to go
So
back.
in a way,
Which philosophically, I
created
think that
the conditions for you, the next level, the next step of your life.
Like, honestly, I don't want to make it like very much philosophical, but I think
why not?
He passed away intentionally. He was like, he came to the conclusion that this is the best way that I can bring this guy back. I can see like all these stuff gonna happen. He was also, I think, tired of the life as it is, and I think he was his move, because I connected with him after. Like, I am much more connected with him now than before.
How did he die?
Honestly, he was very, very healthy. It was very random. So my mom is telling the story that one day we woke up, and my dad was also a workaholic. He was going to work, and like before I wake up, he was gone, and before I go back, he was not coming home yet. So the only thing that I really not happy about it is that I just didn't get to talk to him from the time that I was mature enough to be able to have deep conversation with him. But the way that my mom put the story is that one morning he woke up and my mom, to her surprise, she mentioned that your dad was really happy. Like, for the very first time, she was like, my mom was like, I'm going to a dentist, and my dad was like, I'm gonna take you. And my mom was very different of your dad offering to take me to the dentist. And he was healthy, and they just drove to the doctor. My dad dropped my mom, and then she said that I'm going to find a parking spot. And then my mom went to the doctor, and then my mom said that I was like calling your dad a few times. He was not picking up, and it was normal for my dad to not pick up. And then he said, like, after a few times that I tried to call, a random person took the phone and said, do you know this person? And he was like, yeah, it's my husband. And then he said, like, this man is right now here. So my dad parked the car, and then on his way, he had a heart attack. and he was just like on the street, and it took like an ambulance like I think 45 minutes to get to him, and then that's how it happened, from what I learned.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Your poor mom. I mean, that's
and that right now that is the only concern that I have, that she's alone in Iran. My sister, she's in Australia. I'm here, and she's.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
I that's why I have chosen to not leave Toronto, partly because my mom is here alone in the same way.
And the government of Canada is not doing their best to reunite families. Like all of these random people are getting here, but you are not able. Like there's no way that I can right now bring my family here right now, or just my mom. There's no application. The family sponsorship is gone. So
yeah, well now especially in the last few weeks, you're going to have a lot more trouble. It's a very moving, profound thing to say. I feel more connected to my dad now than when he was alive.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So you are saying how you became like natural, like the way that you're doing the podcast. So long story short, at that time we started, like I saw this Avatech in Iran, and I was amazed by the dynamic of it, but how people are actually working on ideas. People from Shiraz, from Tabriz, everyone was like came to Tehran to this part, and they were like all working to some extent that I was like, I haven't seen this even in Canada, you know. So that was a time that the Avatech, the founder of Avatech, they asked, because at a time I worked at Google for quite some time, and then I had my own startups here. So he asked me to stay here, like mentor these guys, like whatever, you know. So I stayed there, and then I was like, I'm going to do my own startup here, because I saw how dynamic the environment is. So the Avatech, the program, it was an accelerator program. So we had to come up with an idea, build our idea in the span of 6 months, and then go pitch to investors. So we worked on it. I had this online food ordering idea because I was at a time before I moved back to Iran. I was in New York. I was using Seamless. It was an online food ordering service. That was the very first time that I felt that I experienced how these startups are working there, and it was pretty also new here too. So when I got back to Iran, we had to go and pitch to the investors, and my English was not good at a time. You know, it was not. I studied here, but it was more of I learned English in a way. I studied it rather than being able to talk with people. It was, like talking was different.
So even when you're in Iran, the investors you speak to them in English?
Yes. So that was what Avatech did, because they wanted to actually, the JCPOA and all these signature and all of these stuff that happened, we wanted to actually have a more global appearance in the world. So and also there were foreign investors among those crowd. Right. So we had to go and pitch it in English. So I went there and I pitched Rayhon in English, and I did a good job. So when I was actually taking the steps coming back, I felt my dad's voice in my, to some extent, I felt like I was more, it was not me doing the pitch. Like, I don't know how to put it. It was not me doing the pitch. So I felt that I was much more powerful in a sense, like I had much more knowledge. I had much more, like I felt assisted. So that was the time that I felt like—
You really did?
Yeah.
Wow. Would he, seeing you right now, would in terms of the way you've built your life, is part of it feeling like what you're doing is what he would have wanted you to do?
So my dad always, the reason that I said that he always was a very perfectionist person. So
I hear
the
you.
very first time that I made my, like I was at elementary school or even like high school, like we sold that fajrdanish.com website that I told you for $1 million toman.
And he was like, it could be 2 million.
No, he actually, I wish—
How dare you?
I wish he would have done that. What he did was like, so at high school, I made $1 million toman. Like I think salaries was like 2 million, 3 million toman at the time. So we sold it to our school, and then I went home. I showed my dad, look, I made this money. My dad was like, "Be jay in kara baro beshin darsetو بخون." So I'm not sure if he would.
Instead of this, go home
Yeah.
and do your work, your studies. Yeah.
Yes. So
Meaning what? Like, what is it? Meaning, is that the doctor and engineer thing or something? Like you're you're wasting your time with this tech stuff or whatever, or
no, not necessarily. I think they like my family, like overall, like my sister, my dad, they were really like official. Like, how would I be able to put it? رسمی و خیلی. So me doing this, I don't think they would. Like, I think I
there's
know.
no briefcase. You're not in a suit. You're not going to a nice office.
I think when my mom and my sister, they're watching my podcast, they're like this, oh my God. They wouldn't approve, but I think
I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure that's not true. At the height of Rayhoon, first of all, can I ask a strange question? How does it work? And I know how it works in music. Like if I write a melody and somebody else takes the melody, I want to get credit for it somehow, right? I want to, at least if the notes are exactly the same. When you're taking an idea, when somebody takes Netflix and says, I'm going to start the Netflix in Iran, is that okay in the tech world? Is that considered some kind of theft or stealing?
Ideas are not patentable.
I see. So there's nothing unethical. Not that I'm complaining, but there's nothing unethical about starting an Uber Eats. That's the same
As
idea
a matter of fact,
in Iran. Right?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, that's how technologies are evolving. And to Elon Musk's credit, Tesla's technologies are all open source. Because he said
you can steal whatever you want.
Yes, because he said that if we are working on developing the best batteries in the world, the best, most efficient tech in the world, and if we really do care about advancing technology for humanity, then here you go. This is the technology that we are using.
Right.
Ford, make your batteries
but it does
like
seem
this.
counterintuitive from a business standpoint.
Yeah.
Feels like if you're the guy who started Uber,
Yeah.
It's like I own that creative content. Nobody else is allowed to without paying me.
We had so many other examples like this. So for example, pull to refresh. So for example, on Twitter, you pull your app to the bottom and it refreshes.
Yeah.
That for the very first time, that idea came from Twitter at a time. Now it's X.com, but Twitter. And it was patentable. Like they patent that idea, that this gesture of pulling something down, and then other softwares couldn't do it because it was patented by X. To some extent, that this happened so much because users started doing this and they were expecting for all other apps to work like this, that initially, like some changes also moved that even gestures are not going to be patentable. So ideas for sure.
So at the height of your Uber Eats, Rayhoon, when it's growing rapidly, it's this successful business. Was it local? Was it just Tehran, or was it all over Iran?
All over Iran after 5 years.
And did you feel like this is my future? This is what I'm doing?
Oh yeah. Well, not necessarily that this is, because I had this. I put myself in the category of serial entrepreneurs now because I just moved from one idea to another idea.
Yes.
But so first of all, these are also not ideas. Like ordering food online is not an idea. Like you should be able to do it, like as if, can I create another phone? Can I create another glass? So, but at a time, it was very, very hard because we built something really great. We had a very good growth. And we were raising funds and we were like growing really fast. And then you have no idea, like shit started happening one by one. So first, the dollar started from, at a time, dollar was 1000 toman, and then it became like 3000 toman. So meaning that all of our term sheets with the investors and all the promises to the investors were like based in US dollars or euros. And then for every food that we were selling, we were making $1. And then after $1 from 1000 toman shot 3000 toman, instead of $1, we were like making 30 cents.
Right.
And suddenly our investors were like, what just happened? All of the projection that we had for future,
And
all
that was
of the
based
promises.
on
Yes.
scrapping the JCPOA?
That was the beginning of it. And then dollar from 3,000 toman shod 10,000 toman. And then Aban happened. And then COVID happened. And then restaurants closed. We initially, before I left, I sold it to another company. But now that I am actually back after 2 years,
I tried to look it up. Does it still
after
exist?
2 years of operation, no, we actually got merged by another company because then investors backed off because it was even right now for our investors now is illegal to participate because they are not Iranians. So which goes back to all of the stuff that happened to Iran right now. That is like this startup ecosystem is not much celebrated by government. So all of these. So the thing about the startups right now in Iran, right now is that we didn't have the support of the government. So we are actually against to some extent with the government because they don't cheer it because of all
From
of
a business standpoint, what was one of the biggest lessons you learned, say, from the Rehun experience?
how to work with people, and you need a fertile place to grow. So that's what I learned is that I finally learned why everything is happening in United States or even in Silicon Valley. That's where all the talents are. That's where
Because that fertile place to grow doesn't exist in Iran.
Or something that I learned was that
What about like Dubai?
Yes, so that's my point. So what I learned is that all of these stories that I was like telling you, they all happened in the span of 5 years, from 2014 to 2018, 4 years. What I learned is that if you open up Iran or if you just give this much of a permission to do stuff in Iran, things can change very fast. That was the biggest thing that I learned.
That's interesting, because people say, whenever we have these conversations, sometimes naive, sometimes desperate, sometimes fueled by dreams and optimism, that change is going to come to Iran, that the revolution is afoot, that the regime is going to fall, that there's going to be some fundamental change to the political structure and the theocracy there. There's always the following conversation, which is like, well, then what? I mean, it's going to take years to rebuild the country. And there's always somebody who says, it can actually happen pretty quickly because the Iranian diaspora, not to mention Iranians inside Iran, but who are 30% of our audience too, listening right now, but in English, by the way. But for Iranians in the diaspora, it's a very educated, a very aggressively smart and industrious diaspora that these people, I mean, obviously there would be people who've written off Iran and say, I'm not going to go back or whatever, but that there's a lot who would immediately help to basically reconstruct, for lack of a better term, and build quite quickly. It sounds like you believe that could happen.
I observed that rather than believing it. Like the belief came from observing. That I observed in the span of 4 years, things went to 0 to 1. Like suddenly everything changed, and even in the terms of like cultural thing, like people getting educated, people getting to know all of these new technologies. And Iran is really advanced to some extent. Like, honestly, I don't see Canada as advanced as Iran.
In what way?
Both in terms of technology, the day-to-day. Like, in Iran is really high-tech. Like, if you go to some restaurants, like you see some random technologies that I haven't seen yet here, too. Same with Dubai, too. But
you choose to be here, not there.
Well,
you left again.
Well, I have a bit of a route right now here. Well, yes, because it was not as easy. Like, we had a lot of unnecessary obstacles or unnecessary things that we have to deal with. I didn't find myself so sophisticated to be able to run an already hard job to do, which is a startup, and also dealing with all of the other things that I'm not supposed to know. Because the whole idea of being able to do on a startup is that you're building on top of the infrastructure of the country, and the infrastructure was not there yet. And when we were like building it, the government not only was not helping, but was also not was trying to avoid building this infrastructure.
I've long given up trying to figure out the machinations of the decisions of the Islamic Republic leaders, but why wouldn't they see something like Rayhun as a good thing? There's nothing fundamentally political about it.
Yes.
There's nothing that says that this is anti-Islam or something, right?
They actually made a movie on it, though. So there are few reasons from their perspective, I would say, is that number one is that these startups, they have always been shown in a way that there is this very fun place with foosball and these happy chairs and these young...
that's too Western?
That's too Western.
Right,
so
right.
The work culture is Western.
Right.
They expect like chai o ganduno, probably like, I don't know, something like that.
Right.
That was very new to me because I was like, what? So that's number one.
Yeah, no beanbag chairs in Islam. Yeah,
So
yeah. Right.
not a big deal. I don't think these are big deals, though.
Okay,
The big
yeah.
deals are that these type of startups, they are relying on a heavy investment. Most of these investments are coming from foreign countries or foreign investors. So, and the fact that, for example, DG Kala, they are one of the biggest startup in Iran. They started owning and taking shares from the retail. The traditional retail. But what is happening is that all of these companies, they have all of the user data, information of the people, or even, for example, like...
Yeah, but the Islamic Republic did the JCPO deal.
Yeah.
They wanted that. I mean, they benefited from it. And the money was going into the, right?
When we are talking about Jumhuriyat Islami, I think we are not talking about one entity. I think even internally they are like, for example, Rouhani was for it.
Right.
He was actually proud, and he announced it on his first 100 days that we raised, I think, $100 million. DG Kala, because raised from a foreign investor, like something about like $100 million from a Swedish investor. And Rouhani mentioned that as his achievement for the 100 days. So some of them for it, and the other part is not for it. So it's a little bit weird. To be honest, we haven't been able to figure it out ourselves. We don't even know if we are for it or against it. But
are there people, if we fast forward to today, like, so 2018, you come back to Canada, you start this, you've got Better Mode now, and you've got the podcast that we've talked about. Are there people who sometimes say to you, friends or maybe business associates or maybe competitors, I don't know, whatever, who say, dude, you let down the team by leaving Iran, come back?
Oh, yes, that is a common, because there are so many people in Iran right now that they are so proud of staying in Iran, and they accuse us of leaving the country and not building it up. So who else would you expect to build it up?
And how do you respond to that?
Honestly, hats off to them that they stayed, but I think people are different. You cannot just say something to everyone. And on another note, I don't think as an entrepreneur I have to fight at everything. Like, one of my jobs is to actually find fertile places to run in a startup. Like, I haven't chose to go and fight with some of this stuff, or choose your enemy wisely, to be honest. So I haven't really decided that, okay, I'm gonna take this hard path.
It doesn't hurt you. You don't take it personally.
No, but one of the reasons that we are doing the Tabaq 16, the podcast and all this stuff, is that back in time, even your pilots were actually traveling to other parts of the world and getting back. So how can I stay in Iran? Like, I wanted to be connected. I wanted to learn here the way that I came out for the knowledge and went to the university here. So I see myself being stronger here right now. So this time, if I choose to go back to Iran, this time I'm going to be much more powerful, like I would say. Like, I have my connections, I have my network, I have
by
money.
the way, why are you not in Silicon Valley? I mean, why are you in Toronto?
Very, very good question. I think because I'm already a bit established here, and I just traveled to States this time to look at it in a way to choose to stay. And I would probably move away to Silicon Valley. But the problem is that
you have to find a condo with a 16th floor, first of all.
That's number one.
Otherwise, change the name of the podcast, which is bad for branding.
Yeah. So I am somehow dropping Tabaq. Now the podcast is 16. But I think the network that I have here, I wouldn't be able to find it in SF. Or on another note, I found SF is very, very nerdy, techie thing. My life is not like that. I'm not a nerd. I don't consider myself a nerd. Yes, mine is like I do music.
I thought you would be proudly considering yourself a nerd.
I would take it. I wouldn't. But I don't consider myself a nerd. Like I try to improve every dimension of my life. I'm much more interested in music, to be honest, than tech, I would say.
I mean, you started the original Spotify.
Exactly.
I'm angry at the Swedish guy now who stole the idea.
That's a very good point. So the problem with nerd and techs is that their passion is the tech itself. Mine is what you can do with tech that interests me. So for me, tech is a tool. On its own, it's not that much interesting to me. What I can do with it is interesting to me. I make a lot of music. I use technology to make them, not generating them, but software and all of these stuff. So
you'd be more Steve Jobs, not Bill Gates.
I would love
you
to think
don't
of
want to
myself
sit
like that. Yeah.
You don't want to sit there actually making the computer.
Yes.
You want to have the idea for
and taste. I think I try to be in the culture and translate that culture into tech. So, for example, Rayhun was just not an online food ordering service. All of the marketing ads, the tone, the design of the product, and everything else was. We borrowed a lot of stuff from culture. Like when we wanted to create an ad for it, I wanted to some sort of a upcoming artist sing an ad for it or something like that. So it gives me permission and the budget to do things that I want. That's why I like the startup.
How many episodes of Trailblazers have you done?
I think we are right now at 150.
So you got 100. You've had the opportunity to do this survey of 150 of tech of CEOs, leaders in the field, interesting minds. What do they have in common? What have you noticed about them?
I have been asked so many times, how would you summarize all of these episodes that you have?
Different question.
Yeah, I know.
I'm curious
I know,
if there's something about that, a common trait that these people have that leads them to be the captains in that field, for lack of a better term.
Most of them are very, very ambitious. And I think it's so easy to say that ambition is something that a lot of people have, but I haven't seen so many people that they're as ambitious as these type of people, that they just wanted to be at the forefront of technology. They wanted to be at a cutting edge technology. They wanted to develop things. They wanted to change. They want to grow. So that's what I feel about most of them. Not all of them, but most of them.
Hardworking?
Very. And they enjoy doing it, not because they're pushing themselves to do that.
Ego?
I think as they start doing and achieve more, they become more humble. I think humbleness is something that you become honestly, rather than you try to act. It's so hard to do something. Like, honestly, if someone says, "So you're so successful," I was like, "Yeah, okay, thank you very much." And people might think that I'm just having an ego, but yo, man, I tried so fucking hard. I'm no longer just like it should have just happened by now. I'm like that. Because
you can be self-critical and have an ego. I don't think having an ego is a bad thing.
No, it's not.
If you don't have an ego, you don't have opinions.
Exactly.
You can't be a strong person. I mean, so I think it's so if the common denominator, or one of them, for the kind of people you speak to, is ambition, that's what I see in you. I mean, you're clearly a driven guy. You haven't rested at all, seemingly. I mean, certainly not on your laurels. You don't even rest now, in feeling like you've accomplished. You're even booking this interview. You're a really busy guy. You've got a lot on your plate. You've got a lot you want to do. So what would Soheil's end goal be now, or at least in the next decade or two? Is it billions of dollars? Is it world domination? Is a luxury plane full of fashion models? I mean, how do you define where you want to go?
I watch a lot of Alan Watts or listen to Alan Watts or Brian Cox, and really interested in cosmic and cosmos and like how the world works and all this stuff. And I came to the conclusion that there is no end to it. Like, it's just like I am really, really trying hard to live in a moment. So I don't have an end goal, honestly. I learned not to have an expectation of an outcome. So I do all of these stuff, and if it happens, good. If it doesn't happen, I would just continue doing that.
Really?
In that sense, yes. In that sense, I am at ease. Otherwise, I would have killed myself till now.
If your next podcast gets only 5 views, you don't care?
I don't care.
Really?
That's how it started. Like the whole idea of the podcast started because I was like, I'm talking to my friend and I'm recording it as if I am in a Zoom call. If you want to watch it, watch it. If you don't,
if your company makes half of what it made last quarter in this quarter, it doesn't bother you?
It used to, but then I learned.
How do you undo that? That's interesting.
Life is not that important. Like life, like the world is like 18.7 billion years. We've been here for just like this. This is the amount of time that we've been here.
Yeah.
Like, why would
no one's going to remember anybody
so
200, 300, 400 years from now.
So we are a joke in that sense. It's a joke, and it's a beautiful thing that just happened. So I just try to enjoy. Like maybe I feel like life is so precious to waste it. So that's how I look at it. There's nothing to worry about. It's just all of the potential that has to be released. If it happened to release, like I'm gonna be happy. If not, I enjoyed my time here.
How do you practice living in the present?
I can't, to be honest, but I try.
You said something I'm working on.
Yeah.
How do you work on it?
So first of all, I try to, again, not get mad and sad about small stuff that usually, like, I try to put it into perspective of how unimportant everything that happens. Like, if my podcast doesn't get views, who gives a shit, you know?
Well, your investors, I don't know. I mean, isn't that the story of
those things are only important to me.
You've been talking about that for an hour.
No, but I think because I cared less, it grew. You know, like I think.
Yeah. Somebody else was talking to me about that. They were saying, somebody was yesterday saying in business, they were a business coach, and they were saying that they actually believe, you know, this, when you talk about relationships and you say, if you stop looking for it, your dream person will appear. You know, he was saying that's true in business too. If you stop, which again seems counterintuitive because you think the person who's pedaling the fastest is going to get it, you know. But if you stop being aggressively looking for that end, what is your end goal, etc., it will find itself. But I also at the same time think that you can't possibly, like, Tabachishun's Dow or Better Mode is not going to become $1 billion company unless you set that intention. It's not going to accidentally become that, right?
That is true. So number one is that, first of all, we have been learning a lot of stuff by hearing it or reading about it. Like, for example, like all of these stuff that we are saying that is a little bit counterintuitive because we heard from someone else. We didn't really experience it. Me, the only credit that I might take is that because I keep doing stuff, and if I keep failing, so then I get to experience feelings, then I get to experience how things. So some stuff really started to, I can comprehend them to some extent. So, for example, like this idea of not really caring about the outcome is so easy to say. And I've heard that so many times before. Yeah. Unless I really did not care. Yeah. And I got sore, you know, because I was running this startup, that startup didn't happen, that startup didn't happen. I got sore. From now on, honestly, like, truly it doesn't matter. I'm not saying it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm so tired and sore that it doesn't matter. And from now on it started happening, you know? Wow. So it actually, like, truly you need to have that intention because I knew it before. Like, I've heard that before, but I just could not doing it. So saying how you practice this is that it's just because I'm becoming sore.
It's a really great, I knew it would be an invigorating conversation with you. I knew it would be, but it really has been. And I'm very grateful that you came here and your openness and your ability to show us your authentic self. I believe you. I don't think you're being a fake Iranian. Is really, really rewarding, and it's been my pleasure to have you on this program.
I would not be wrong to say that I learned a lot from you, even like being myself from you. So really, really thanks for having me. It was an honor to be here.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you very much.
Soheil has left the studio. Pegah has entered the studio.
Back in my seat.
Back in your seat. Post-interview reaction. Pegah.
Yeah, it was so interesting to hear him talk a little bit more about the background of Tawagh Shunza and also hear about some of his earlier projects. I had heard bits and pieces of that, but I didn't know the full story. So that was really interesting. It was interesting to hear him in English now as opposed to what I'm used to with Tawagh Shunza.
And
what
was that like? What did you learn from him
I think
in
it was
English?
just different. I think it was just different listening to him in English.
How so?
I feel like he was more calm, and I say that in a good way. Like, I find he's really animated sometimes when he's on Tawagh Shunza, so that was interesting. But it was wonderful to listen to him.
I feel really connected to him. I mentioned it in the interview about our dads, losing our dads at the same time and stuff. He just seems like a guy. He's got a proclivity for, he's interested in music, so we have that. But I thought, he's a guy who grew up in Iran, and I grew up outside of Iran, and I thought it was really interesting to hear him say that if Rayhoon, like, he goes back to Iran in 2014, he builds this Persian Uber Eats, and it wasn't fated. It was fated. It wasn't intention. It wasn't always his intention to leave Iran again. It's that going back to starting the show today and my essay about, imagine if tech trailblazers were actually allowed to soar, these tech trailblazers that I consider Soheil to be. So he says that, if he could have continued doing if Rayhoon wasn't limited by all the factors, the conditions from the economy to repression when it comes to editorial and promotion and investment, and that he would have stayed in Iran, that he was it sounds like he was happy with that. It was just that the guy wants to fly. He's clearly an ambitious guy.
Soar,
He wants to soar. He's in his 30s. He's in his prime. It's like, I want to go. And so he has to leave to do that. So it's a bit tragic, that he unwittingly or unexpectedly returns to Iran, but would have stayed. I mean, I'm happy as a Canadian that he's here too. I mean, he's the kind of guy you want in Canada. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that he's an Iranian-Canadian doing great stuff in Toronto. But that whole story is his story is everything, is everything we talk about all the time in terms of the paradox for Iranians who feel connected to our country of our ancestry, but don't feel like we could thrive there, are effectively in exile.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny when he was saying all of that. For a moment, I almost was thinking, he could be talking about last week. Not even the 2014 or whatever.
About what?
About
which
the
part
conditions and the dysfunction inside of Iran and all of those same reasons that he was forced out. I mean, to bring it to more kind of present era, if you look at the current circumstances, all of those same things apply. And the only thing that we see, and I know this is something that you and I talk a lot about, is we're often repeating the same stories about the dysfunction of the society in Iran, whether it's economic, whether it's environmental. I mean, look at the last week. Right now in Iran, it's been 1 week where the energy crisis is at an unbelievable level. I mean, schools, universities, factories, they've all been closed down. You're talking to people, they haven't had power for hours at a time. There are strikes taking place because factory workers can't go to work. Or look at the value
hard
of
to run an Uber Eats app
when you
without
don't have power. Exactly. Or I mean, look at the value of the currency. I know Soheil was saying the same thing about his investors and looking at how they were making less and less on the actual return on investment, and it's as a result of the currency devalue or the depreciation of it. And right now we're seeing the value of the currency drop to the lowest it's ever been. I think the depreciation has been 25% since September alone, which is insane. So, the same issues are occurring year after year. They're only getting worse and worse. And I think it contributes to the fact that more and more people are leaving Iran, and those trailblazers.
Although he was very respectful, he I think genuinely is respectful of those who choose to stay and plug away in Iran. I mean, there are those people, those 8,000-9,000 innovative companies that that are operating there. That there are these trailblazers, again, to use the word, inside Iran who are doing great things, but are stifled from getting past a certain ceiling. And he seemed to indicate that there were some who don't appreciate people who do leave, and we know that.
I always have an issue with that conversation. And anyone who knows me, I've always thought about going back to Iran at some point, and it's always been something I've considered. And I've always said, I want the opportunity to go there and live there and experience things and whatnot, albeit can't do that anymore right now. But anyway, more and more though, the people who I talk to who come from Iran say, if anyone's not leaving, it's because they just can't. They would love to, but they can't. And there must be something stopping them, whether it's financially, whether it's circumstantial, politically,
family,
whatever the circumstances is. But I think things are getting so bad that even those people who maybe in 2014, 2018, whatever, wanted to stay and hold down the fort and, have progress there and build and whatnot, I think they're becoming disheartened too because of the way that things are going.
Except for there's always that certain cohort who seem to be doing just fine.
Well, yes, of course.
and who say, oh, how much we have the biggest malls and things like that. But and good on them if you can in that environment be thriving. Thank you. It's almost Christmas.
It is.
The next episode of Roqe will be after Christmas,
on Boxing Day.
Do you I mean, we in the great Islamic tradition, we have a Christmas tree.
Yes.
We give presents.
That's right.
We don't really thank the baby Jesus, but we are appreciative.
We just give the Christmas.
We are appreciated that he created the conditions where we could give presents to each other and have a tree.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
You the same?
Yes, me the same.
Yeah.
I've got my tree up. I actually have to do some Christmas shopping still, which usually by this point I'm done. But growing up, nobody ever questioned me that we celebrate Christmas. Yeah,
but I guess more recently, because there's more immigration and stuff, I have people who say, oh, do you celebrate Christmas? I'm like, what do you mean? A time to buy things for your loved ones when they're on sale? Of course. Yeah. That's the spirit of, we even eat turkey, which...
Oh wow! You go one step further.
Oh well, okay. Yeah. Well, we're very specific. We're very ritualistic about it. We have the stockings. We have the turkey. Okay. We have the tryptophan. I fall asleep by 9 p.m. after eating a mound of turkey. And
amazing.
Yeah.
The best
all
part.
Of that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Yeah.
And thank you to Soheil Alavi. Thank you to all of you, the amazing team who put this. First of all, the amazing people who listen to us and watch us. Thank you. And thanks to the amazing team who put this show together. Super Parisa, Savvy Roham, Smart Pegah, Tina the Photo and Video Queen, Seppi Wonder, as well as Bearded Omid, Talented Anahita, Methodical Kaveh, and Solid Samin. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. If you haven't subscribed already, do so on any or all of our platforms. Remember, Roqe Live 4 if you're in the Greater Toronto area, or if you can come to Toronto, come visit us. February 6th. Tickets are on sale now, and you can get them at our Roqe Media Instagram. Press the link on the bio. Find me on Instagram at Jian Gomeshi. And as ever, please remember, Mizun Bashi.